Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, the first in the post-Anna apocalypse since she's gone on maternity leave, but don't worry, she'll be back before you know it. And in her stead this week, we have the amazing Sara Pascoe. Now, you don't need me to tell you who Sara Pascoe is, but you might need me to tell you where she is about to go on tour. She has a brand new show. She'll be in the UK, Ireland and Australia. And if you're in Cambridge, Dartford or Leeds and you're listening to this when it goes out, you might be able to get tickets to see her right now this weekend. If you're in Northampton, Brighton, Oxford, Newcastle, Hull, Manchester or Birmingham, you'll be able to see her in the next few weeks. Then in Dublin, Cork, Belfast, Aberystwyth, Cheltenham, Cardiff, Bournemouth, Colchester, Milton Keynes, Liverpool, Harrogate, Basingstoke. That'll be over the next month or so. And then in April and May, she'll be appearing in Sydney, Canberra, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth. Like I say, you have to go and see Sara's show. It's called Success Story. It's absolutely brilliant. Tickets are available now at Sara on Tour. That's SARA on tour.com. And you can also go to her website, which is sarapascoe.co.uk for more details about Sara. Anyway, once you've got those tickets, then please do enjoy this week's show. I'm absolutely certain you will. And what else is there to say apart from on with the podcast?
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast coming to you from the QI offices in Covent Garden. My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with James Harkin, Andrew Hunter-Murray and Sara Pascoe, and once again we have gathered round the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days, and in no particular order, here we go. Starting with fact number 1, that is Sara.
Okay, my fact is that the man who invented Pringles was buried in a Pringles can.
He was tiny.
He was very small. You've seen him, the guy with the moustache and the round face. He doesn't have a body, so I just slipped him right in there.
God, did people have to carry him down there?
Yeah, they employed 4, but they only needed 1. So they passed him like in a relay race.
Oh, it was the baton, yes.
So I should add, he wanted to be buried in a Pringles can, because I think he was very proud. And actually, it's quite an interesting story, I think. So the backstory is for this. In 1968, Pringles went on sale, advertised as Pringles Newfangled Potato Chips. That was their full name. They're not called that anymore because of one of the 5 Pringles dramas I'm going to be telling you about, which doesn't even include being buried in a Pringles can. So backstory, 1939, I don't know if you know, there was quite a big war and crisps were deemed non-essential and they stopped making them.
Okay.
Yeah. They brought them back after the war and they were rubbish. They were really greasy. Apparently there was loads of air in the bags and all the crisps were broken.
Oh, this war sounds horrible.
I know. And that was the worst thing that happened to anyone. So people really moaned about the crisps. I'm sure they had other things to also moan about, but you know, they were like, we're miserable, let us have cheap, tasty snacks. And so Procter & Gamble, they started trying to invent something better. In 1956, they employed a chemist and mathematician, Frederick T. Bauer, to invent a new kind of potato chip that was more palatable. He spent 2 years inventing a saddle-shaped, the mathematical term is hyperbolic paraboloid, a saddle-shaped chip that would go in a tubular can, which meant that there would be no air in it and they wouldn't get broken, but they tasted rubbish. So he got moved
got moved. Why the saddle shape? Because you could just do a round in the same tube. You could absolutely fit that in. I wonder what it gave you.
No, they're not stronger. Are they maybe stronger?
They're stronger than a flat, for sure.
Okay, and if they have to be that thin,
there's quite a lot of buildings made in that shape. For instance, what's it called?
Quite a lot.
There's a velodrome in London, for instance.
That's one. Name 10 Pringle buildings.
I don't think I could name 10 buildings under this kind of pressure.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
But yeah, quite often in buildings you'll have odd shapes and it will be to do with strength and support and something. Maybe it was just aesthetically pleasing for a mathematician to sort of go, this shape will fit together.
I can give you a reason why they're stronger, because I just thought of one.
I only want 9 more Pringle.
It's because they have 2 arches. So you know an arch is a strong shape.
Yeah.
Now, a Pringle has 2 arches. One goes in one direction and the other one goes in the opposite direction. And so you've got 2 arches which are both strong and they're both fighting against each other, so it makes it super strong.
That's really cool.
Can I ask you a question? Because you seem to know a lot about this. Is that the same with feet?
It is exactly the same with feet.
So that's why feet.
Oh, No.
So there's your second Pringle shape.
There we go.
Our human feet.
That's why feet are so delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, so they made one that was disgusting.
Yeah, so he made one that's disgusting, but it fitted together really neatly. So he was moved to a different snack. I couldn't find out which snack he was moved to.
Right.
But he was moved somewhere else. But then a couple of years later, they came back to his idea. Bauer was granted the patent in 1971. And they came up with a new recipe, which was paste of dehydrated potatoes, rice, corn and wheat. They used a cookie cutter to make them that shape flat, and then they put them on a saddle thing that Bauer had invented to give them the shape.
Lovely.
Oh, I didn't know there was a saddle shape that they sat on to,
yeah.
I guess that
to
is
be
the
baked
saddle.
to it. Yeah,
In
that's
a
the
sense,
saddle.
The Pringle is the jockey.
Exactly.
Riding that saddle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so lots and lots of work. And
Brilliant.
he didn't just invent Pringles, he also invented freeze-dried ice cream, that other snack
Amazing.
we're always popping.
He was really proud of his freeze-dried ice cream, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
of course, but he didn't get buried in one.
Isn't that like
amazing.
astronaut ice cream,
Well,
the
it's-
freeze
no.
dried?
Basically, it's just add milk,
Yeah.
and then you have ice cream.
Well, you have
cool.
to freeze
You have
it as well.
You have to freeze it and add milk. I'm not exactly sure what
No,
there
that's
was
the same
remaining
as
after
making
that.
instant coffee. I think that's completely fair enough, because you
Yeah.
have to pour hot water in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. We don't know who the original Pringle was, because the original was Pringles newfangled potato
Yes.
chips, and it was
Oh, right.
Pringle apostrophe S.
Yes, there's a few
Mr.
theories.
Pringle, you know.
There's a few theories,
Yeah.
but they're all really boring.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did think, oh, maybe this will be juicy, and it's like, oh, there's a guy called Mark Pringle who's named as one of the people on the patent, and 2 people lived on Pringle Road who worked at the factory.
But they were going to call them Winkles, weren't they?
Were they?
Yeah. I think they paid an advertising company to say, what should we call this thing? And the advertising company came back and said, let's call them Winkles. Wow. And they thought, no, that sounds a bit like a willy.
Bad salad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just quickly say, Frederick Bauer was cremated and then his ashes
yeah.
were put in
Yeah.
it. He wasn't buried.
Yeah.
Oh,
Buried as a-
everyone listening knew that, Andy.
I did. I know. As in, but I really like that. It was only most of him got into the tube. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of him
Yes,
after the
yeah.
cremation. So the overflow went in an urn, classic,
Yes,
and
yeah.
then but most of it went in the tube. But his son Larry was interviewed in Time magazine all about it after he
Yeah.
died. When did he die? About 2008, I
2008,
think.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was interviewed by Time magazine because it's important stuff. And he said, Larry Bauer said, my siblings and I briefly debated what flavour to use, but I said, look, we need to use the original,
Yeah.
which I think is fair.
But
Yeah.
not the original, which tasted like shit.
Yeah.
I've written a list of some of the Pringle flavours.
Oh,
if
nice.
you'd like to
Okay.
hear. And these are, a lot of them are special, so they weren't out in every country all the time.
Right.
But here's some. Shout if you like it. Ketchup, zesty lime and chili cheese dog, pizzalicious, buffalo wing, low fat, jalapeno, honey mustard, cheesy
Oh,
fries,
low fat. Was that a flavour?
onion blossom, screaming dill pickle, pumpkin pie spice, soft-shelled crab, shrimp, which was pink, seaweed, which was green, blueberry, hazelnut, lemon, sesame, mushroom soup, eggs benedict, and hot diggity dog.
Oh,
Diggity,
thank
that's
you.
my one. Yeah.
I'll have hot diggity
I'm
dog,
in.
thank you.
Imagine if someone comes to you at the Pringles restaurant and has to go through all those.
Yeah.
Every single person's going to order hot diggity dog, aren't
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of the smaller Pringle dramas, and I was so
Oh.
impressed by this.
Yeah.
They've had 2 flavours recalled because of salmonella. Which is amazing with something with such a low food
they? There was
content.
the
Wow.
raw chicken flavour, wasn't
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Cheeseburger and taco night were both taken off the shelves.
Very
because of
nice.
salmonella.
Well, do you know that of all these flavors, quite a few of them are vegan options?
Oh, they were vegan.
Yeah, so has that changed now?
One of the dramas.
Oh.
Drama
I hope you're
number-
counting at home.
I've got it as drama number 4. Pringles added milk. And
Ah,
apparently, from the articles online, vegans were in uproar. But I know quite a few vegans.
Right.
And I think they just choose other snacks now.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're vegan, aren't you?
Yeah.
How many Pringles can you have? Can you have the
I
original?
can't have any.
You can't have any?
No, they added milk
Oh,
to
to
it.
every
They used
single
to be
one.
plant-based. And something to
Right.
do with the adhesion of the flavour. It's in that textured, hydrolyzed vegetable protein.
I've got another controversy. Pringles.
Oh.
What was it?
Okay.
What was it? Pringles.
I'm saying dramas.
Pringles dramas.
Yeah,
Right.
because I don't want them to sue me. Because
Okay.
they've had too many court cases.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Wait, let's try and... I say Sarah does have this.
Yeah,
on
definitely.
Her. Yeah.
This is it's a rumor that went around,
Oh.
and it's about Bauer himself. It sort of relates to the fact,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Was the Pringles creator cremated and sold to customers?
And is he
Well,
vegan?
I wonder it's not vegan. Yeah.
Every single can. Yeah.
Humans in
And
it.
no is the answer. I
The answer's
imagine.
no. Yeah. Snopes did a pretty quick debunk of that one.
Right.
But that did the rounds on the internet a while after he died. It was,
Okay.
yeah.
It would be, because you know how they always say that in every glass of water, like 2 of the molecules had been weed out by Julius Caesar
Yeah.
or something.
Yes.
I wonder how many, if you put one of his molecules in each crisp, that still wouldn't be that many, right?
No, I would eat it if I knew that there was one molecule, which is such a small amount
Yeah.
of the founder, and it's kind of a tribute in a way.
Right.
Would you?
I would.
Would you
Would you
pay
take-
more for it?
Oh no, I wouldn't pay more for it. I'm too skin flinty to pay bonus for the Frederick edition.
I so would pay more for it. That's exactly the kind of thing I'd buy. It's like how I tried to buy a Frisbee that had the ashes of the Frisbee creator
yeah.
inside. Yeah, they did a range.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
family did a range of Frisbee infused with the ashes.
And that was the guy who invented the Frisbee.
Yeah.
Was it just as a tribute? They
Yeah,
just put
like-
him in a load of different limited edition Frisbees.
Yeah, and there was limited edition. I don't know, it's just as a fun thing. That's fun,
It's
isn't it?
making me think, if I want to be buried in an interesting way, I'm going to have to invent something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people are never going to want to eat me.
One of
or-
your DVDs, maybe.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
associate like...
Oh, yeah, if I do a Netflix special and then they have to show my autopsy. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you pay extra for that?
Yeah.
That's the extras.
Yeah, put it on Amazon Prime. I'll buy that. So Pringle guy,
Oh, yeah.
Pringle man,
Oh,
Frederick Bauer.
Mr. Pringle.
Mr. Pringle
Oh,
has
that's one.
a first name.
Yes, well,
Yep,
this
here we
is
go.
drama number 5. This is the final drama, and it may be the best drama. Actually,
Do you
This is-
think?
I think it's the
Okay.
juiciest drama.
Oh, well, you
Shall I go
take
through
the lead here
I'm going to
then.
go through the boring dramas,
Yes.
and then let's come on to this one.
Okay, well, let's hold back. I don't want
Okay.
us to
Okay,
peak.
shall I do a drama which I'm not sure you'll have?
Okay, great,
Sarah?
yeah.
This is Simon Lee, 28, who was stopped by security in Asda after they mistook a bulge in his pants for a can of Pringles.
Wow.
This was reported in the Metro.
I'd still go to see a doctor.
Okay, so that's
whatever
on my
the
list of
results.
Simon Lee dramas, not Pringles.
Oh my god. What was it?
What was it?
It was just a fold in his pants. So Simon Lee, 28, said, "Looking back, I could see the funny side. It was just a cock-up, no pun intended." And the spokesperson from Asda said, "No colleagues at this store are aware of this incident."
What?
So it wasn't an official member of staff. was
It
a
feels like he
stranger.
might have made it up and the Metro reported
Oh,
it.
brilliant.
But I don't want to get sued by Simon Lee, 28, so let's call it a drama.
Yeah,
That's
I think
a good
that's
drama.
definitely a drama.
Yeah.
So here's the legal dramas.
Yeah.
Drama number 1. The US FDA, 1975, ruled that Pringles were not potato chips because they're not from sliced potato, which is what people expect from potato chips. So they couldn't call themselves the newfangled potato chips. They could say they were potato chips made from dried potatoes. They thought that was too long, and then they changed their name to Crisps.
Yes.
I found that really interesting, and in fact, I think we might put it on this season of QI of like, what do Americans call this, and put some Pringles on.
yeah.
Try and get the forfeit of chips.
Chips. But also, you can't call them Crisps
Oh, really?
Yeah.
because
Well,
this is the next court case.
Yeah.
In this country, though.
In this country,
Yeah.
and also then it got overruled, so I actually don't know what you can call it that. It would be clangers going off all the time because the next court case in 2008, Procter & Gamble lawyers successfully argued that they're not even crisps, even though it said crisps on the packet. They won it. The potato content is only 42%, they argued, and they said their shape is not found in nature.
Which I love.
It's so ballsy.
No one get their feet out and say, "What do you call this?"
But God, those are good lawyers.
So they were doing
for
this
one
to
thing.
avoid paying VAT
Yes.
on crisps.
Yeah.
But then I think it went to appeal. I think it went to the
did.
highest court in the land, which was
Court
then
of
the
Appeal.
appeal court.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the judges there ruled that no, that's ridiculous. They're clearly
Yes.
crisps. You have to pay your tax.
Yeah.
And I think
And
it cost them about 100 million quid.
And they'd already paid it because they knew they were going to lose.
Right.
So they did that thing of like, hey, we've been paying it proactively all of this time. Because I think tax dodging isn't a nice thing for a company to be very publicly doing.
Yeah.
So,
And we're not suggesting that Pringles did that.
No, they didn't. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yes. Sorry, yeah.
If they did want to send us some of their disgusting salmonella products, vegans can't even eat.
Ash infused, please.
Yeah. It was at the time, the appeal court, Lord Justice Jacob, I just like this thing he said. He said, there is more than enough potato content for it to be a reasonable view that it is made from potato.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good old-fashioned
What's
legal
the other
sense.
58% then?
It's flours, so sort
yeah.
of wheat, corn.
Got it.
It's a number of delicious other palatable ingredients that are legal. I would imagine.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So I think the funnest drama. So some people, because they weren't
It's number
popular.
5 now.
This is actually number 2. So people trace their popularity back to an advert in the 80s, because in the originally 60s, 70s they were a flop. People didn't really eat them. But then Brad Pitt did an ad for them.
What?
Yes, Brad Pitt did an ad. You can go and watch it on YouTube, which I really recommend. Because it's really fun.
It's fun, but it's also just a young Brad Pitt.
Is it sexy?
He's so sexy.
Oh, okay. It's about theft, so I'm going to disagree with Andy.
Does he put some Pringles down his pants?
Sneak straight out of Asda.
What period Pitt are we talking?
I mean,
here?
Yeah.
proto Pitt, as in
Proto-Pitt.
pre-Thelma and
Very
Louise.
young actor,
Yeah.
That's his first break. Although apparently he was 27 in the ad.
Yeah.
So it took him a while to get his big break. His
It's
big break
really
is Thelma and Louise.
inspirational.
It's not
Just
meant to
2
Well,
years
actually,
later.
I'd argue it's Pringles.
Yeah, well, I think without the Pringles ad, he probably wouldn't have got Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, most actors at the beginning will survive off those kind of jobs.
Pringles.
Well, that's what the thing in the advert is. You've got these boys in a car, and all of them are wearing their sort of swimmers, and they're driving, but oh my god, they've all got a tube of Pringles that's empty. Like they've run out of Pringles.
Oh, no.
But then they use the Pringles cans as like binoculars, and they see 3 hot chicks in their swimmers, also driving in a car, but they've got like a whole sack of Pringles with them.
Oh wow.
So they all get out by the side of the road and they dance while eating Pringles.
It's kind of Pringles orgy.
Yeah,
It's pretty,
but
you
then
know.
the girls turn round and the guys have stolen not only all of the remaining Pringles, but their car.
Oh wow.
They just drive off in their car. I just like-
Okay.
Once
Yeah.
you twat, you can't stop.
So let's come back to final drama.
Here we go.
The name
Okay.
of Mr. P.
Mr. P.
Mr. P.
So it suddenly got revealed that he does have a first name, and that his name is Julius. Julius Pringle.
And people loved this, including Pringles. So Pringles tweeted it. It was on one of the American talk shows. People were really excited, like, oh my god, guess what that guy's name is? It's Julius Pringle. And then...
Well, it's a sort of early day Wikipedia hoax, basically.
Yeah.
Someone went into the Pringles page on Wikipedia, edited it in. Someone
Yeah.
saw that got passed around. So,
So
it's
two
nothing to do.
students in Chicago, they were watching American football. One of the players was called Julius. One of them asked the other, what do you think the Pringles guy's called? And he said Julius Pringle. They thought it was so funny. One of them went into Wikipedia and changed it. The other one was a moderator, went in and backed it up. And so all of this can be proven as well, because they've still got the same sort of at name. So Justin Shillock, Platypus 222, there's records of him changing it on Wikipedia and on Twitter. There was a previous Facebook group where he was called Boris Pringle. They went in and changed it to Julius Pringle, so that it was backed up everywhere.
Wow.
And when Pringles was sold, Kellogg's just went back to the Wikipedia. They said Procter & Gamble would never have fallen for it. They knew that they hadn't called him Julius Pringle, but they just, yeah.
But
what
they
a fun
acknowledged it.
hoax.
Yeah, they said they said fine. It'll be Julius. There is a theory who Mr. Pringle is. What it is there was one other person who was involved in the initial concept of Pringles in the making of it, and it was a science fiction writer, a guy called Gene Wolfe,
Oh, yeah.
who writes pretty incredible sci-fi novels. I actually haven't heard any of the titles before, but they seem to be really well regarded. And he was responsible for developing the machine that cooks. I don't know if he invented the saddle. I think that must have been Bauer, but he did the machine. And if you look at a photo of Gene Wolfe, some people have noticed that he's got the parted hair, he's got the big mustache,
No body.
he's got zero body, yeah. And he looks very Pringly.
Is that
So
right?
yeah, so
How interesting.
but that's a tiny theory. There's I'll admit it, it's one
Yes.
person's theory. I haven't seen it.
Well, every
It's
theory
enough.
starts with
It's
one person.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
relativity started with, you know. Not sure it was.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that what standing on the shoulders of giants means?
Yeah.
Did you know that Julius Pringle, because we might as well call him that now, he once shaved off his moustache for Movember?
Did he? What did he look like?
Shaved it for
Like a-
November.
Yeah, yes, the opposite, but to
Yeah.
raise money for Movember.
Okay.
So he just had a white round face on the Pringles.
Because is
tubes
he a
for month.
potato?
Oh,
He shouldn't legally be, but is he?
maybe he's 42% potato.
Yes.
Yeah, his dad was a potato. His mum was some corn powder.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear? This isn't a drama. It doesn't even merit the name drama.
Okay.
But I read a bit of a spicy takedown of Pringles,
Oh yeah.
and this was on the website SeriousEats.com, so you know it's
Yeah.
pucker.
Yeah.
The author wrote, "I've creepily watched a lot of folks eat Pringles and can say with absolutely no authority that most people pop them in their mouths oriented as an upside down saddle, right? So you're putting that. Now, this mostly makes sense because it's the way they come out of the tube and you get all the flavour on your tongue. But the more enjoyable way is to eat them flipped over so that you're working with a crispy saddle for your tongue.
I'm confused about which.
When you eat a Pringle, are you
Yeah.
popping it on your tongue like a saddle?
I see, yeah.
Or are you popping it the other way out?
I do it the other way because of a retainer I had as a kid, and it feels like it slots into the top of your mouth quite nicely.
You do have taste buds at the top of your mouth as well.
They're less powerful
Not
than the
that
tongue,
many.
though, aren't
Oh,
they?
yeah, definitely.
You don't taste any of the hot diggity dog.
It was you guys who said there were taste buds on testicles or something.
Yeah, that's how I eat them. They're a nice little saddle for the testicles.
And that's why that guy was in Asda.
Yeah, if
He
you
was
are,
just
if you are
shoving
going
them
to
down there.
shoplift, put them in
Oh.
individually.
Delicious shoplifting.
Okay, it is time for fact number 2, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that the world's first IVF clinic was opened in a town called Bourne.
I love it.
Brilliant.
I love
We
it.
never heard that. It's
I couldn't
nuts.
believe it.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe I'd never heard it. So this was, we're talking 1978, the first IVF baby, Louise Brown,
Yep.
in Oldham. And just after it had happened, the NHS kind of refused to support the service. So it was really controversial. You know, we might get to it later, but a lot of people did not like the idea at all. And
Can I quickly ask,
Yeah.
is it more or less controversial than Mr. Pringle's first name in drama terms?
I'm not sure how many dramas we're going to get to in IVF. But yeah, so the NHS wouldn't support them and they didn't know what to do. They had to find a building where they could start up their own clinic. And they found this old Jacobean manor called Bourne Hall, which I think is in Cambridgeshire. And they started the IVF centre there. And, you know, many thousands of babies were born there. And it's just a fun name.
Yeah.
So where did you say Bourne is?
I think it's in
It
Cambridgeshire.
is, it's
Okay,
yeah. Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's another nice coincidence, which is that the first IVF baby born was Louise Brown. And Brown is, with one letter different, an anagram for born,
Oh, yeah.
except, of course, that she was born in Oldham, which is somewhere else.
And what's the opposite of old in Oldham? Young.
Young.
What are babies?
Oh my God.
Come on, it's all coming together, Andy.
Yeah, yeah.
See, sometimes you got to sit back and just watch the magic. It's beautiful. She's a pretty amazing character, Louise Brown, because she's become the spokesperson really for what a success it is, and she goes all over the world basically doing conferences. So does her sister, because her sister, who is also an IVF baby, was the 40th born baby, and then the first ever person to have a baby off the back of being an IVF baby as well. So
her sister had children first, did she?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Louise Brown
Probably-
did as well.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's hard enough being sort of a middle child, let alone where your elder siblings like, oh my God, a medical miracle. Oh, and you. Yeah. They had you as well, did they?
There's still the one thing about Bourne. Is it called Bourne House or
Bourne
Bourne
Hall.
Hall? Sorry,
Bourne Hall.
yeah. They were there, the pioneers of IVF, partly thanks to the Daily Mail.
Well,
This is a very interesting thing. So yeah, they.
You're always talking about how much you love the Daily Mail.
I know. Give it a rest.
I knew you'd cram it in again.
Every episode we edit out an extended rant about how great the Daily Mail is. But the pioneers, though, specifically two doctors called Steptoe and Edwards, and the editor of the Daily Mail got in touch and promised help and helped them to look for premises. And the Mail originally purchased Bourne Hall, the Jacobean house. And they appointed architects and surveyors because it needed lots of work to turn it from a crumbling manor house into an IVF clinic. But then in 1979 they pulled out because apparently the venture was too risky. So it's not an unblemished success story for the Daily Mail, unlike most of them.
Okay.
And then Steptoe and Edwards raised money and bought it
Yes.
themselves.
And Jean
Yeah.
Purdy as well.
We got to bring her into the story because she has been left off. No, I'm not saying Andy, you're leaving her out, but you did, and I think it's time to bring Jean Purdy back into the story permanently. She was a pretty amazing character, and by all accounts, this wouldn't have happened without her. To the point where many people see her as the nurse who was working on it. Therefore, if a plaque was ever put up about them, it would have the two names of the doctors, and then she would be linked into, and all the supporting staff. And famously, Edwards, the doctor who was still alive, absolutely was refusing to have anything to do with it unless they put Purdy's name on it, saying that I feel strongly about the inclusion of the names of the people who helped with the conception of Louise Brown. I feel especially about Jean Purdy, who traveled to Oldham with me for 10 years and contributed as much as I did to the project. Indeed, I regard her as an equal contributor to Patrick Steptoe and myself. And there was a point when Jean Purdy's mum got ill and they just stopped everything because they couldn't do it without her for months. Wow. So she was so integral to this thing.
Yeah.
Andy.
But because she wasn't a doctor, that's why people overlook the fact that she was involved in the whole process.
Yeah.
She found the hall. She's the one who located Bourne Hall in the first place.
Yes.
And then she died before they gave the Nobel Prize, so she wasn't allowed to get a Nobel Prize because you can't if you're dead.
And Steptoe
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah.
So it was just Edwards who ended up collecting
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And it was controversial, wasn't it? It was sort of like everyone, particularly within the religious faction, sort of thought, are you going to give birth to a soulless baby?
Well, I did IVF, and they still now, because there's two different kinds of IVF. You have IVF where you have ICSI, which is where your partner for some reason has low sperm count or substandard sperm. There's probably a better term for it than substandard. If your partner's got really weird sperms, then what they do is they pair them up rather than letting the sperm swim and choose.
Really?
And when they do that, they say obviously some people have real problems with that because it doesn't allow like the accident of nature for them to choosing them. So even within IVF, there are still frontiers where people go, well, that's so clinical. Or,
Wow, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I can't believe they're real, these things, but they're what are they? They're micro syringes. I'm going to get them wrong. Micro needles, which they use to inject a single sperm into the center of an egg.
Yeah.
It's not just introducing them anymore.
They do both. I think they do
How
both.
do they make a needle that's small enough to inject an individual sperm?
Probably with microscopes.
Probably.
Andy.
Actually, no, Sarah. I think it's an old craftsman called Luigi who's got a very steady hand. I think that's it.
So when she was born, she was called the test tube baby,
Louise Brown.
And she wasn't made in a test tube,
It's
was
a
she?
petri dish, yeah. So test tube is the term that's the media threw out there, which we've all kind of kept going. But yeah, it's petri dishes, and she was saying that there was all that stuff. So is she going to have no soul? Are they making Franken babies?
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. But there was a lot of love as well, and a lot of people were writing anonymous letters in, just sending them support. When she returned to her hometown after coming out of hospital, the streets were blocked and lined with people from her town, and 100 reporters on the streets, and they all stood out there like it was like the Queen coming. It was a huge showing. And one of the people who was standing in the crowd was a young boy called Wesley Mullender, who would go on to become a bouncer, and then one day Louise Brown's husband. So
Oh, really?
Wow.
I
Yeah.
thought you were going to say you wouldn't let her in, so you knew exactly what she was.
Sorry, you need a soul if you're coming in here. I'm sorry.
It'd be so great to be like, Louise Brown, 16 and a half, I believe, if I remember exactly when we had that parade.
Wow.
But yeah, he was 7 years old at the time, watching his future wife be brought home.
So strange.
Crazy.
Well, the birth was completely mad. There were police officers lining the corridor in hospital where Louise Brown's mum gave birth because it was so
Protect her.
controversial, and the birth had to be filmed to show there was actual documentary evidence that
That
this baby
it's
belongs
real.
to this mother and is real. She had the baby. Louise herself, when she was a newborn. They normally have, what do they do, about 5 tests when you're a newborn baby, just to make sure,
the ears, the eyes,
and all that.
Yeah, the colour of the skin.
Yeah, Louise Brown had to have 60 tests before her mum could hold her.
Wow.
It was really just testing absolutely every aspect to make sure this is a completely healthy
But for the first
baby.
time, you would be a bit like,
Yeah.
oh my god, this
Yeah.
can't just be, we can't just flipping made a human, have we?
Yes.
Yeah, you would. Part of you would be like, double check that everything's
Yeah.
there, and it is an incredible thing. People who don't go through IVF, I know they think about it as like very medicalised, but when you have your embryo transfer, you watch it on an ultrasound, so you see the little globule of water that contains the embryo sort of being inserted inside you, and your partner can be there, and they give you
my God.
an ultrasound picture.
Wow.
So like with our son Theodore, we've known him since he was 5 days old.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so actually I feel really romantic about it as well
Yeah.
as like that, oh my god, it's so incredible they can help you. Also, it's really smooth running now.
Yeah.
And when you have that process you described, is the old Italian craftsman is he in the room
Well,
or
he
is
has
he
to
what?
be.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah,
everyone else
sorry,
is like,
yeah.
where's that needle?
Only he has the dexterous fingers that can pick the needle out.
It will be sad when he dies. And he wants to be buried in a tiny needle.
Steptoe was in a shipwreck.
Was he?
Was he?
Really?
Yeah, but a proper full-on shipwreck. So he was born in 1913, and he was a naval surgeon
Right.
during the
Oh,
Second
yeah.
World War. He was the right age for that. And his ship was off Crete, and the Germans captured it. They sunk it, captured it, and he became a prisoner of war.
Right.
Wow.
And then he helped other prisoners escape while he was in a German prisoner of war camp in Crete.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
And then he was put in solitary confinement for that.
Oh, okay.
What a life!
He sounds
What a
great.
life.
Yeah.
Some more things on conception in general.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth Christine was the wife of Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI, and they wanted a male heir. And they decided to do that. They prescribed her a gluttonous diet, large amounts of alcohol, and to spend all day looking at erotic paintings of men.
Oh.
She was like, all right,
Go
if you think it'll work.
Wow.
People say a thing now, which I don't think is based on that much evidence, but about the gender of the sperm making a difference at how fast they swim. So, like, early in your ovulation if you want a boy, and late in the ovulation if you want a girl.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
What, because female sperm are slower swimmers?
Or they live longer or something. There's something to do with the weight. I don't think it's based on that much evidence. It's like one of those old wives' tales when people like you.
Sarah's pointing it down here when she says people like you, just to be clear.
And also the old thing about wearing boxers or briefs.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
that thing. There was a recent study and they found there was no appreciable difference in scrotal temperature in men who wear briefs and boxers, although the NHS kind of says, even though it doesn't seem to affect sperm quantity, you may want to wear loose-fitting underwear. So the NHS kind of, hedge their bets a little bit, but according to the studies, it doesn't make any difference.
But they say the thing about hot baths and showers is
That
a
would,
thing that...
like a hot bath would change the temperature.
Change your core body temperature.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I guess the thing is that testicles are really clever at removing themselves from the body when they need to cool down a little bit. And I think they thought with pants it would mean they couldn't do that because they'd be stuck there. But with a bath being so much hotter, I mean, they can't jump out.
Well, you need to. What you need is one of those bath rests. You know the things that go across the bath
For reading a book on.
or
Yeah.
for a tray of food.
There'll be
if you're
someone
an
in the
invalid.
bath right now listening to this podcast.
Just tie across a little net and put the nuts in that.
Yeah.
That helps. Yeah.
I don't know. Because these guys know this, but when we were trying for our third child, my wife went to a acupuncturist because she thought we weren't conceiving, and she said, "Does your husband take hot baths?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, because I love hot baths." She said, "Well, that's the problem. It's his fault. It's all his fault." And then she booked me a sperm test. The acupuncturist just booked it for me. And Fenella was like, "Well, you got to go." So I went and I did the thing, and I was furious that I was going to do this thing off the back of the acupuncturist.
Yeah.
Then I wrote to them and said, "Where are my results?" And they said, "Well, we sent it to the acupuncturist." So she then had my results. And she's been
It's
telling...
like a GDPR issue.
I know.
She opened yours. She didn't open them.
She did. She did. And
This is why alternative medicine doesn't have a code of practice.
And she'd been giving Fenella crap for weeks, like saying this is your husband's fault, this is all your husband's fault. And Fenella was getting angry at me. You and your bloody bastard have been trying for ages. So she opens it up. Fenella calls her up and says, "Can we get the results?"
Yeah.
And she says, "I've been doing this for 20 years. In all my time, I've never seen such strong sperm results in my life. He is a super sperm
This
holder."
is so inappropriate, though. Even though that's a compliment.
I couldn't believe it. Anyway, yeah.
But you know, having a high sperm count can be bad for conceiving as well.
Yeah.
And that's because you're more likely to get two sperms that go in the egg at the same time. And obviously, I think that can be twins, but it can also cause problems.
Yeah.
Right.
Too many people at a cocktail party, no one enjoys it.
They're just talking over each other.
Yeah.
You need just the right number.
But it's never happened at any of my parties, I'll tell you that much. I'm lucky to get 4.
Okay, it is time for fact number 3, and that is Andy.
My fact is that there is only one guy in Dijon who makes mustard. And he's busy.
Any girls who do it?
I don't know.
And did you find this out from the Daily Mail?
Sorry, I got all my facts on the Daily Mail. No, actually, I found this out from Atlas Obscura, and it's about a man whose name is Nicolas Chavy, and since 2009, he's been the only moutardier in Dijon.
Love that word.
Yeah.
Moutardier.
And he wasn't even born to it. You know, he's made himself a mustard maker. He used
Is
to work
anyone born into mustard?
there must have been some mustard dynasties, and the Coleman family,
Oh, I
maybe.
see.
I don't know. But he
Yeah.
used to work in IT.
Right.
And then he has a tiny boutique. It's not a lot of Dijon mustard that gets made in Dijon, but
Are they allowed to call it Dijon if it's not made in Dijon?
you are allowed to call
It's
it
just
Dijon if it's not made in
sparkling
Dijon.
horseradish.
In fact, there are no rules about whether you can call something Dijon.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a wild west for
Wow.
Dijon mustard. You
Wow.
can say anything is. Well, you can't say anything is Dijon mustard. You can call any mustard Dijon.
So it's a recipe rather than some local produce.
Yeah.
How
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's Grey Poupon, which you might have heard of.
What?
That's a famous Dijon mustard, and that's based in the USA. Has been
Yeah.
since the 1940s.
What did you
It's
call
called
it?
Grey Poupon.
Grey Poupon. To rhyme with coupon. Have you not heard of Grey Poupon?
I'm afraid I
have,
haven't.
yeah.
No.
It's it's one of the most famous mustards in the world, but only
Oh,
because
sorry.
from about it's basically because it's in so many rap songs. There's a real thing where lots of rappers, like from about the early noughties, they started
Okay.
mentioning.
I'm going to go all Pringle buildings here. I want 10 rappers.
Lil Poupon.
Biggie Grapes, yeah.
The Wu-Tang Clan, Kanye West, Ghostface Killer, Busta Rhymes, Kendrick Lamar. I could go on.
they
but
genuinely?
Wow,
But genuinely,
okay,
there's a-
okay.
Oh, wow.
There's a brilliant Vox piece where it was noted by a writer called Estelle Caswell, who I think she writes for Vox, or she was
Right.
writing for Vox at the time, and she basically made a supercut of Grey Poupon references in rap songs.
Wow.
It seems to be the thing that you mentioned if you want to say. And it's just a mustard. It's just a slightly more
Well,
expensive
no, it
than
might
normal
just-
mustard.
Yeah, who knows though? Do you know, not rap, but have you heard of DJ Mustard?
No.
DJ Mustard, big DJ,
What, a DJ?
record producer. Yeah. He's worked with a lot of famous people.
Is
Why?
it a joke about Dijon?
Well, why do you think he's called DJ Mustard?
Because Dijon contains DJ.
Oh no,
He's as keen as mustard.
that's
It's a
But
great
is
work
it like
ethic.
cutting the mustard? Isn't there? There's lots of.
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff.
yes.
Yeah, going on.
Getting the mustard. Mustard must have other slang.
Yeah, well, it's not that. It is that his name is Dijon, his first name.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's an unusual name.
That's an unusual name, but
his
that's what
surname's
it's called.
Mustard.
Dijon Mustard.
Wow.
Are they mispronouncing Dion?
I don't know how he's pronouncing it, but possibly.
Can we talk about mustard?
Yeah.
The Romans were the first to eat it, but the Greeks had it, and they would use it medically. They would rub it on the chest for bronchitis. If your baby had sore teeth, they might rub it on the teeth. And Pythagoras took it against scorpion stings. So,
Yeah, I was talking to my friend Ed about mustard the other day, and he said that his dad used to put it on his horse's legs.
so much to
What, as
unpack.
a condiment? Or.
No, he said a racehorse, when they've got leg muscle inflammation, and this was during the 70s and 80s, I guess, is
Yeah.
when he was doing it. Yeah, you'd mix it with linseed, with comfrey, with water. You'd make a paste, then you would put it on and you'd bandage up.
And the poor horse is like, "Are you basting me?"
Pope John XII appointed his nephew as the Grand Mustardier to the Pope.
Oh, what a name.
He was the Pope's mustard maker. And the Pope's mustard maker became a word for someone who was quite pompous and they had a pointless role in society.
That's great.
Yeah, I would suppose like someone who would give your car a ticket, like a traffic warden, you would call them a Pope's mustard maker.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I was gonna
right.
stick up for traffic. I think they've got an important role in
Oh
society.
no, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
I do
yeah.
agree, but I'm thinking that you might say it because
Yeah.
you're
Oh, 'cause
upset
you're
with
cross,
them.
yeah.
But that's the third missing mustard phrase. We've got cutting the
Yes.
mustard, Keena's mustard,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're the Pope's mustard maker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a tragedy that one's dropped out of circulation because I think it's a
I
really
think it's
good
because it sounds too much like a euphemism.
phrase. Yeah, yeah, you're right. And you said it's a nephew who made his.
It was his
mustard maker.
nephew, so it's nepotism basically.
Wasn't the Pope's nephew thing? It was often their illegitimate sons, who they.
That's a good point. They would call them nephews. Yes, I don't know if this is that in this case.
Because they're not supposed to use their mustard maker.
Oh.
my god. That's now the fourth phrase.
Yeah.
The guy in Asda thought it was my mustard maker, but it was actually a can of Pringles.
Oh, that's horrible. France had a huge mustard crisis last year.
Okay.
Yeah, they ran out of mustard. They ran out almost completely of mustard.
Oh,
That's
really?
not. French people eat a kilo of mustard each. I read in somewhere.
Okay,
Per
right.
year.
Per year.
Yeah.
Sorry, which is that's a lot though. That's
It's
a
a
good
lot.
few jars per person per year. You've got to be shifting it to get through that. But basically, 80% of the seeds used in French mustard are from Canada,
Yeah.
and they had a terrible summer of weather failures and things like that. Crops all suffered, and France uses 35,000 tons of mustard seeds every
Right.
year to make its
Insane.
mustard. It's a mad
And
amount.
the other thing was that a lot of the yellow mustard seeds come from Ukraine and Russia. And so that meant there was a shortage in yellow mustard for people like the Germans and the British. And so the Germans and the British started eating Dijon, and that meant that the French didn't have any Dijon. It's a
exactly.
nightmare.
Okay, I knew they were going to blame it on us somehow.
In the 14th century, the Duke of Burgundy held a gala where the guests ate 85 gallons of mustard in a single sitting.
With what? Did they say with what?
It really doesn't say.
It must have been like a fondue where they just dipped little breads in there and
Oh,
stuff.
God.
But how much of that was left on the side of the plates after they
Yeah.
finished their actual meals?
It was a single sentence in the book Gastro Obscura, which is made by the same people who do Atlas
yeah.
Obscura. Didn't say any more, and I couldn't find anything about it. But that's a lot. It
It's
didn't
a lot.
even say how many guests there were. So
Right.
Well, yeah, if it's one of Andy's parties.
Yeah,
That's a lot per
25 gallons
guest.
per person. That's a nightmare.
Okay, it is time for our final fact of the show, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that the poet W.B. Yeats once had a vasectomy to cure his writer's block. So,
there wouldn't have been much of a second coming for him.
is that one of his
It's
books?
his most famous poem. Yeah. And, you know, if that stays in, and it's a big if, clearly at this stage, there'll be a few people who really like that.
yeah.
Oh, I'll keep it in.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, you can still orgasm if you've had a vasectomy. I really love the reference to the poem, though.
Podcast at QI.com if you want to make that point.
I
one of
was
Andy's
thinking
parties.
to cure his writer's block,
Yeah.
they bored his writer's cock. Spoonerism.
Very
Not
nice.
technically in the penis, though, they do the procedure.
I used to really like this podcast. Have you run out of facts or something?
Is it just you in the inbox under a series of different names, Sarah? It's uncanny.
So I got this fact from
Yes.
someone called Georgia Granger. She's got a PhD in the history of vasectomy. You can find her on Twitter at SnipHist. Which is, so she does a lot of vasectomy facts on there. And yeah, she was, I asked her, what's the most interesting thing that you know about vasectomies? And she said about Yeats and how he did this. And this used to be a thing.
Were you Googling vasectomies, Dan?
The super spam, I've got to stop it somehow.
There is no vasectomy strong enough.
We don't understand. These tubes appear to have been unknotted from the inside.
The acupuncturist just shaking his head.
20 years. Yeah, so this used to be a thing that it was believed. These were sort of, I guess, partial vasectomies, and the idea was that there was rejuvenation, and it was written about in the 1920s, and the idea was by sort of taking the tubes and tying them up would do something to the production of the male hormone, and that would be increased, and that would go back into the body and sort of revitalize it. It's kind of like Doctor Who getting another regeneration. It was kind of like a whole new life, basically. And he was quite old, Yeats, when he had this. He was 68/69 years old when he had it, and he called it his second puberty because it kind of really did work for him, particularly on the creative side. His wife said his writing was just extraordinary from that point on. It just, whether or not that's a placebo or whatever, but
psychosomatic.
yeah, but it
Or
did the
even
job.
Having an operation, when your body recovers from pain, you quite often do feel rejuvenated.
Yeah.
So it could just be having a sort of minor procedure, even that in itself.
Yeah.
Wow. So for all writer's block, just have like,
No, I'm not going to recommend it, but because I think that whole thing, like men losing their life force through ejaculation, kind of goes around and around.
Does it
in
really?
history. Yeah.
Yeah.
So similar kind of time when they were sewing monkeys' testicles onto people.
yes,
to
this
give
is the
them-
same time.
Yes, to give them extra, again, the same theory, extra sort of male life force.
Well,
That's
the
interesting.
guy behind this procedure, Austrian doctor Eugen Steinach, that was the procedure, it's called being Steinach. He made extraordinary claims for his procedure, obviously, as so many of these doctors did. So just to quote from one piece about this, he claimed his patients changed from feeble, parched, dribbling drones to men of vigorous bloom who threw away their glasses, shaved twice a day, dragged loads up to 220 pounds, and even indulged in such youthful follies as buying land in Florida. That's the most virile thing you can do.
That's what young people do, buy land in Florida, because that's not what I've heard. How interesting.
But the other side of this, so Sigmund Freud, again, a similar kind of time, was doing the same to women with clitorectomies.
Yes.
That same thing of...
It was moving them, wasn't it? It was
moving them... in terms of orgasms, but also lots of people had them removed from that same sort of argument.
Wow.
Well, Freud is one of the people who, when Yeats was looking into it,
Yeah.
was amongst the list of notables who had the vasectomy
Yeah.
done in order to help him. And he did it for, he had jaw cancer, which
Yeah.
they thought that would help with that, as well as other things of the,
I mean, he kept smoking, unfortunately.
Did he?
Yeah,
Right.
which is probably the reason he had jaw cancer in the first place.
I wonder if they
Cigars,
wouldn't have
yeah.
known that at the time, right, I guess?
No, I don't think it would have been conclusively proven.
Yeah. Wow.
Yates did loads of sort of spooky spiritual stuff, didn't he?
He's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's why we're talking about
That's
him.
why we're talking about it, really. Yeah, I mean, he was someone who was very closely associated with the world of Aleister Crowley and all that sort of stuff, and he was very much part of a movement which was it Blavatsky? Was he part of the Theosophical
Oh, yeah.
Society? Yeah. Which is she was this extraordinary character, Madame Blavatsky, who was an occult leader, and she just took under her wing all of these big thinkers of the time. And she had theories about Atlantis and our origin stories and so on. And her sort of disciples were everyone from Crowley through to Rudolf Steiner. You know, the schooling education I had was as a result of Blavatsky, basically, and what Steiner took from that and built on it. And Yeats was someone else who very much believed in it.
Yeah, she claimed to have gone to Tibet and had these lamas who she'd met, and they could send her ideas through astral projection. They can move from one place to another, but they can also send her thoughts into her head so that she could kind of speak to the dead or tell what the future's going to be, tell all sorts of stuff like that. And there was lots of things like seances where letters would fly around and all that kind of stuff.
And Yeats was involved with
He
this
loved it.
mob.
But even when he turned up, she'd already been theoretically discredited at that time. One of her acolytes had gone to the papers and given them all the tricks of what she used to do to make things fly around the room. And it might have even been the Daily Mail, but it was
Surprised you don't know about it then.
yeah, I think it was
He wouldn't
in
write
one
it
of
down because it involved a woman.
Oh my god. But yeah, I think at that stage it's the kind of thing where you double down even when things have been debunked. If it's what you believe in, you kind of like, well, they would say that they're trying to stop us from doing it. Yeah.
Yates is I don't always approve of the thing of looking at thinkers and writers exclusively through their romantic lives. As in it can be a bit reductive. But Yates' sex life was extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, strange.
Yeah.
Really weird. He proposed to an Irish woman. She was a politician. She was called Maud Gonne, and she was later a really big Irish independence movement leader. He proposed to her, and he'd been in love with her for about 20 years at this point. She said absolutely not. And then he proposed immediately, like 3 weeks later, to her daughter. Second rejection, then said fine, never mind that, and then immediately proposed to someone else who said yes, Georgie Hyde-Lees, and they got married, I think, kind of within a few weeks of that.
Well, part of the reason was that I think it was Blavatsky or someone like that had told him that the best time for him to get married, or in fact he would get married that year, and so he's like, well, okay, well, let's go through the list.
That's what they say about marriage, don't they? It's not about the person, it's about the date.
It's about the spiritualist who's told you it's this year.
You've got a suit, you've booked the guests.
But the relationship with Maud Gonne was really interesting, and Maud Gonne,
oh my god,
absolutely,
Maud
what
Gonne.
a character. She had a second life in Paris, which is why she turned him down all these times. But they did get married in 1898, but they got married telepathically. They had a shared vision where they kind of together imagined getting married on the astral plane.
Amazing.
Yates and Gonne.
Yeah.
Well, it's cheaper, isn't it, on the astral plane? You know, the rooms are bigger. And, you can have more guests.
It was a good idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did do that.
So they had done it, but not
but
legal.
that's not legally binding.
No.
But oh my god, Maud Gonne. I mean, there's one story, and I'm sure you guys have read this, or possibly not. So she was part of, as we now know, the astral plane, part of this mysticism stuff. She had a son, a little boy, who sadly passed away when he was very young. He was 2 years old. And she decided that she was going to force reincarnation, him back into existence. And the way of doing that is she had a sort of a place built for her son, a mausoleum, and she went inside with the partner who she'd had George with, and they went down, and by the coffin of her little son, they had sex, because the idea was to conceive while being next to the coffin would force the spirit and soul into the new child.
This is a lot like early IVF, actually.
So incredibly, she did conceive. Like 9 months later, the baby was born. So they assume from stories that this was the point that this happened. And the daughter's name was Iseult. They had a terrible relationship with each other, I guess, because of a slightly fractious beginning, where she sort of was treating her as if she was the reincarnated son, and it became quite clear that she wasn't.
Well, the other thing is that Iseult was the daughter who Yeats proposed to.
Yeah. So Yeats, we haven't said properly who, if anyone doesn't know, outside of that poem that Andy referenced right at the top. That excellent.
Everyone got it from that, though.
Yeah. But he was an amazing writer. He's a poet. He got the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1923. He was a sort of Oxford University honoured guy. He was an amazing character who still held up. And then there's all this sort of
Irish, of course.
Of course. And he came from an amazing family. And his brother was an Olympian. He got an Olympic silver medal, the first that Ireland ever got, for swimming. Which is amazing.
That's cool.
And it's not swimming the event. It was a painting that he painted called Swimming, because this was back when you could win Olympic medals for paintings.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and so it's
I'm an Olympic swimmer. You don't look like an Olympic swimmer.
Why are you drowning?
So just clinging onto his painting.
And they were a very creative family. He had two sisters who were they were very artistic. They're sort of getting a second, kind of like Purdy from IVF fame, or lack of fame, getting their moment now, because they were very influential on Ireland being its own state. And
And Yeats kind of half wasn't as well, wasn't he? I think he was influenced by Maud Gonne and really wanted to be involved with nationalism when he was with her, but I think also when he wasn't with her anymore, he wasn't that fussed about it.
And she,
I
think,
think, weird.
She drifted in a very radical direction.
Yeah,
and I think by the time that he ended up proposing to her in this realm, she was really, very hardline and very radical, and she was also apparently a chloroform addict. And it was all a bit much for him. So when he proposed to Maud, to the mother, he added quite detailed conditions, which basically ensured he would get a no from her.
Really?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So
cuts out the chloroform.
But he felt, but he felt he had to propose because I think she had been with another partner and then they were not together anymore, and he sort of felt it was incumbent on him to propose.
How interesting.
Just on the marriage that Yeats ended up having with Georgie, or George as he called her.
Yeah.
They were also involved in the spiritual stuff because their honeymoon was going incredibly badly. I mean, really badly. If he's proposed to two other women in the previous month, it's not incredibly surprising the honeymoon's going to go quite poorly. Side note, it was in the 100-acre wood, which is cool.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Really?
or the wood, the Ashdown Forest it's called, which was later the 100-acre wood of
How
A.A.
could you
Mill.
have a bad honeymoon there?
I know.
Yeah.
2-6 every day.
Stole all their honey on the first morning. It was a nightmare. But basically, even on honeymoon, he was writing letters to Iseult. So this is not a good sign for the pros of the honeymoon. And I know, it was like 4 days in.
It's almost like you shouldn't listen to psychics.
Well, psychics, acupuncturists. I mean, careful where you get your advice from, basically. But then she turned it round. She said, let's try some automatic writing, where the spirits will guide my hand. I want to see what comes out. And she said a bit later on that it had been fake, her word, and then she repented and recanted using that word. But basically it turned the corner for the entire marriage, and it turned what was a very unpromising marriage, obviously 4 days in. Together they wrote 4,000 pages in the first 3 years of marriage. And the spirits seemed to be really interested in him getting over Maud and Iseult. They suggested diet tips for him. They suggested ways to spice up their sex life.
This is such a clever tactic.
And so the spirits that they told them when George was ovulating, so they would have better odds of conceiving. I mean, those spirits were unbelievably useful.
Yeah, apparently there was a bit that was stressing the husband's duty to give his wife sexual satisfaction.
Oh my God. She's a genius. She's an absolute genius.
Which someone pointed out that these messengers must have been reading a book that was actually published at the time by Mary Stopes, called Married Love, which had that exact thing about sexual satisfaction.
So
for the wife.
Yeah. So just on writer's block, as this was what Yeats was trying to deal with in the first place, I found the person who I think may have had the worst writer's block in history, a writer for the New Yorker. Very, very successful, well-known writer who was called Joseph Mitchell, and for 32 years he didn't write a single article. He turned up every day to work at the New Yorker, and he didn't write anything. He was working on a memoir, but he couldn't get past chapter 3.
Oh no!
I know, you just
I
turned up
think
every day.
just skip on to chapter 4 and
Well,
come back to it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But there's a theory that he stopped because of someone being nice about him. Someone wrote that he was the greatest living master of the English declarative sentence.
Wow.
And that just clamped him up.
Oh no!
God.
I know. He just couldn't get.
You
just
should have
couldn't
checked
get
his
over
app messages. read your tweets. Read the comments under your articles.
Okay, that's it. That is all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in contact with any of us about the things that we have said over the course of this podcast, we can all be found on our Twitter accounts. I'm on @Schreiberland, James,
At James Harkin.
Andy,
At Andrew Hunter M.
and Sarah.
At Sara Pascoe.
Yeah, and you can also go to our group account, which is @NoSuchThing, or our website, nosuchthingasafish.com. All of our previous episodes are up there, but don't bother going to our website this week. There's way more important websites to go to. SarahOnTour.com or SarahPascoe.co.uk. You'll find links to all of the upcoming legs of tours in the UK that Sarah is doing, and she's also going to Australia very soon. So if you're living over there, make sure to check it out and go see her show. And anything else, Sarah, to mention?
I don't have an H on Sarah.
There's no H on Sarah. At Sara, Sara Pascoe, for the Twitter, and then apply that to the relevant internet domains. Okay, we'll be back again next week. We'll see you then. Goodbye.